So we are live. Welcome everybody. Today's guest is Kyle from Sinister. Um, so what's your story, man? Like, how did you get started with the whole Sinister thing, and basically your background before the blow up?
Yeah, so I always liked cars, and I liked cars since I was younger. I went to all the auto shows, like every kid has it. I had a bunch of Hot Wheels. Turned 16, became a big car guy. Took my first car, obviously customized it, did everything I wanted to do to it to please what I wanted since I was a kid. And then over the years, I had hobbies to buy more cars. Eventually, went from a Jeep SRT to a Hellcat, from a Hellcat to a Z06, Z06 to from there on, I started buying a bunch of things: GTRs, ZL1s, Trackhawks, you name it, new GT500s, old GT500s, and eventually got to a point where I used to sell, wheels and tires and stuff, and make a little money here and there on it. And eventually, I was like, why don't I make some money on cars? And now I have my own dealership here in Wixom, Michigan.
So when did your whole dealership get started? Because I know this was probably a recent thing, right?
Yeah, so I had started a couple years ago, just kind of marketing the company and getting it to where it's at now today. And recently, obviously, I'm fully functional and open. And you guys have seen my website, obviously, Sinister Auto Sales.
So let's go back a few years with the whole issue with the Detroit thing in Texas, where Justin, where he had that red GTR and he was racing that white Viper that caught fire, right?
Right.
So in the video, like I mean, we all seen the beef and all that, but what really happened? Because people were saying, Justin left on two and all that, which how did that all happen?
Yeah, so that race was set up kind of last minute. The Calvo Viper was there. Obviously, at the time, Calvo in 2021 was super popular, and they are today still. But back then, they were really blowing up. And Justin had I believe it was Sissio performance built GTR, and he just pretty much called out the Viper, but they didn't want to do a high mile per hour roll. Or no, Justin didn't want to do high mile per hour because he was on a 15-inch conversion, so 15-inch wheels, and obviously it's super sketchy over 180 or so. So I believe you want to do a 6160, and the Viper's power comes in up top because of the Motec. So they finally agreed to a race, and some of the stipulations we have here in Detroit is you break, you pay. So if your car breaks during the race, you're still going to pay, and a chase is a race. So if somebody jumps, which I don't think he purposely jumped, I think the Viper kind of slept, but Justin ended up leaving before he did, and the Viper still chased him. So chase the race means, hey, look, you still raced. If you didn't think it was an even start, then you shouldn't have went. And the guys in Texas have either never heard of that or they don't play by the same rules. But that stipulation was put in beforehand, and they were a bit upset about it. A lot of the guys on the sidelines were betting and obviously lost, so they all wanted to kind of get their own input in that.
Yeah, and you would think like a state like Texas, where TX2K is basically like the Super Bowl of racing, like they would race like that, but I guess they're just different.
Yeah, so I mean, Texas, there's a lot of racers in Texas, but grudge racing is grudge racing, and if you're racing for money, it's grudge racing. You're racing a car that you think it's either faster or a little bit slower than yours, and you want to make some money, and you want to grudge race. It's competitive, so they didn't like that, and they got into argument over it. But I mean, I think no matter what, the race went on, and that was it. It's a street race. It's not a eventful track race where there's certain rules and stuff, and you can rerun it. It's on the street, and anything that happens.
And eventually, he got paid, right? And
Yeah, so he ended up getting paid for it. He got paid beforehand because we had actually, I think I was a mediator in that. I don't remember if it was me or another person, but he ended up still getting paid because of the stipulations. But obviously, the people weren't too happy about it.
So out of all the cars you had, from the black Jeep to the Hellcat to all of them, which would probably be your favorite one?
It's hard to say. I don't think there's a favorite necessarily. I like to try them all. I'm not really biased as far as cars, but usually I try to stick to more of the American cars. Obviously I had a McLaren, I had a Z06, ZR1s, GT500s, Hellcats, Trackhawks. I mean, they're all great cars. It just depends the use. Um, but I try to stick to more of the rare, limited production cars that you really either can't get your hands on or they're slowly diminishing and going up in value.
Yeah, because I seen first you had that red auto Shelby, and I think you sold that one to that YouTuber. I can't think of his name.
Yeah, Gavin, it's just a
Yeah,
six.
yeah, okay, yeah. And now you got two more of them. So I mean, so what are your thoughts on that car?
The new GT500 is pretty insane for what you get for the money. Yeah, most muscle cars shouldn't be 100 grand, but it's a lot of car for the money considering what's out there. For that, 80 to $120,000 range, depending on the spec you get for the new GT500, it's really worth it. Comparing it to the Camaro ZL1s and Hellcats, Hellcats are great and all, but I think that they're kind of on the lower end as far as the top three. I think the GT500 is definitely superior. Then it'd probably be the Camaro, but the Camaro is more of a track-based car. The GT500 really plays both parts in a very good way. I think drag racing might be its counterpart. It's not really that great considering the dual clutch, but they still get down.
Yeah, you would never think that Ford would finally put a auto in a Shelby, considering every other year was literally a manual.
Yeah, I mean they took honestly a long time to even come out with it. I think it was what 6 years they took to make the next gen Shelby, and they definitely spent time making it right. But they knew that the manual wasn't going to be the way of the future, and that's why they switched to the dual clutch and not just normal automatic.
Yeah, and I mean, even prior to those cars coming out, there were there were rumors that they would share the same 10 speed from the Camaro, which no one really believed because Ford was always known for the manual trans and Mustangs. But now the car's been out for what, like 2, 3 years now, 4 years,
Yep, 3 years.
and now they're all 10 speeds.
Yeah, no, the 10 speed honestly works great in the 5.0s and the F-150s and stuff like that, the Mustangs and the F-150s, but the dual clutch in these cars are so fast. I'm not sure exactly what they were trying to accomplish, but they obviously like knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, and I noticed too, man. Like a lot of people are boosting those 50 trucks now too, man. I mean, are you gonna get one of those eventually?
Yeah, so I can't say just yet, but already in our conversation, you said something along the lines of me buying a car, and there's a couple cars coming in
Oh, nice.
this week that are similar to that. The F-150 based trucks that are supercharged or turboed or pro-charged, they're no one realizes the single cab trucks are so light that you can make them pretty fast, and no one's really going to consider a single cab truck breaking into the low eights, maybe high sevens eventually.
Yeah, and you would think like a truck being light was like impossible, but those trucks are what, like mid threes
Uh,
for a,
a 60 to 130, a 60 to 130. I think I've seen one go in the high twos, and I think that's Midnight Performance. They built one into the high twos for sure, low threes, but I'm pretty sure I've seen high twos. Could be wrong though.
yeah, man. Those guys from Midnight they definitely know their things when it comes to my motor.
Yeah, they have their transmissions dialed in. Like they really know how to get those transits to shift right and to hold all that power.
Yeah. Speaking about the guys from Midnight, I know they have that black vet that's like literally impossible to beat.
Which one, Black Vet?
I think it's that 01 that has those nice taillights.
ZR1. They might.
Black one,
I
like
you talking about AMP or are you talking about Midnight?
Midnight. Like
Okay.
I seen it in a few videos where the taillights were like tinted out, except like a really thin line in the middle.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I think that's
Yeah.
Jesus's car, if I can remember. Yeah, he has a bunch of cars. That guy.
Oh, so then you seen that car in person, then, huh?
No, I didn't see it in
Oh,
person.
no.
I've seen the same videos you've seen, but
Yeah, that car.
he's got a lot of cars, so he puts them together as he can.
Let's talk about some of those cars outside. I seen that green one on your page a few times. So what's the deal with that one?
So the green one is a 22 Shelby GT500 in eruption green. They didn't make too many in eruption green, but the colorway was really nice. I wanted it because I had a green Trackhawk, and this color was more like a gold tint in the green. And when I bought the car, once I knew the deal was finalized with the dealership, I bought it brand new. I'd ordered all the parts for it. So I ordered the 3.8 liter Whipple. I ordered the American Racing headers, the full fuel system, ID 1700 injectors, the signature wheels and tires. And I'm pretty familiar with the cars. I built my red one pretty much by myself. I had a friend of mine put it together for me at a shop, but I took it all apart. So when this one came in, took it all apart, did the same thing. It took a while to get it dialed in because the Whipple 3.8, it's a little finicky. So finally had the chance to take it out last weekend to US 131, and I ran a best at a 930 at 152. And it's a little weird though because you have to drive them to make sure you're in the right mode, make sure traction's off, make sure your suspension's in the right spot, make sure you don't sit on the launch control and you shift at the right time. The new GT500s, I know a few people that figured out how to make the manual mode shift past 7,700 RPM, but most guys have to manually shift it over that. So, you're doing, 152 miles per hour and you're, all that G, all that force, you have to make sure you shift on time and in the right spot. Make sure you don't lose RPM or, possible gains in your quarter mile time.
So going back to the red car, didn't you take that car to Texas a few times?
I did. I took it to Texas2K in 22 and had some fun there on the street.
Any good kills?
I raced quite a few cars. Can't say too much over video, but a lot of the cars were surprised because that car was on a 20-inch wheel in the rear, and it was making somewhere in the 1,000 horsepower range, and no one really would have thought that car would put down the power.
Yeah, and compete with cars that are on a 15-inch conversion and all that.
Yeah, 15-inch conversion, parachutes, twin turbo Lambos, stuff like that.
And that car was built by BetLab, right? By Ed.
So yeah, so that car exactly. I actually disassembled that car all by myself, and then BetLab had put together the build. So I'd ordered all the parts. A little bit of an off build, like I'd say. I was planning to do it myself, but it was a little bit more challenging than I anticipated. So I took the car apart, waited for parts. Took a little longer than I expected, so I decided to take the car to VetLab in the meantime. And a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks later, they had the car put together, and I was dialing it in on the dyno.
So like power wise, the car was putting down a few things.
Yeah, it was about 1,000, 1,050.
Okay. Oh yeah. I mean that's really good, man. And plus, I mean, what tires were you running? Because you were saying the car was skating down on the street.
What do you mean?
The red car.
What do you? I'm not sure of the question. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes. So you were saying that that car was on a 20-inch rim, right?
Right.
So as far as tires go, like what tires?
They were on a Toyo AAA-R, and I also ran the Toyo RRs, but for some reason they didn't perform as good as the AAA-Rs to me. So I like the Toyo AAA-Rs, but I mean, considering it's on a 315/30/20, it's a pretty small tire if you consider the sidewall. Most cars that are putting down over 1,000 horsepower, they're going to want a decent sized sidewall for it to wrinkle and grab, but for it to hook on that small sidewall tire, it's pretty crazy.
Do you still have the McLaren or no?
No, I ended up selling that car.
Yeah, the car was a really nice one. I mean, because you were saying most of your cars are towards the American brand,
Right.
so what made you really go with the McLaren?
I always wanted a McLaren, and I was in the position to sell my red Shelby. So I was looking at the one that Gavin was selling, and I figured what better way to make a deal than to make one with someone similar to my age in the same industry, as far as like YouTube and stuff like that. So I figured, kill two birds with one stone, go buy that one and see how I like it. The 600 LT is really sweet. I say the 720 is more of the comfortable supercar. The 600 is really raw, more of a track oriented car, but it was super fun. The car used to shoot like 6 foot flames, so it's pretty wild. But as far as power, it was definitely on the lower end of what I'm used to.
And that was a 570, right? Or
It was a 600 LT.
so what's really the like price difference between that and like its competitors, really like the Huracan and so on?
So I'm not too familiar as far as the supercar world, the track times, and what's better or worse. I'd say the 600 is very similar to the 570. The 570 is more of the comfortable McLaren. That's why it's called a 570S, and then a 600 LT. LT models are more track based performance cars from McLaren, and the S models like the 570S more of like the comfortable streetable cars. Granted, you can still make them just as fast, but they are more comfortable. So if I were to ever get another McLaren, I definitely wait it out. I wouldn't buy a 720. I'd probably want a 765 LT because those are, the pinnacle of the fast McLarens.
Yeah, man. And I know McLaren was more of a, I wouldn't say underrated, but like you really didn't see people mod those like the Lambos and all that. And I know that I think recently, like maybe 5 years, those cars have been popping up with just light mods and they're they're keeping up with cars that are making well over 1,000 horse.
Yeah, so the McLarens, most I've seen is really built motor, upgraded turbos on the McLarens. Like Justin at ACW Wraps or AC Wraps, but ACW, he has a 720S has a built motor and I believe upgraded turbos. And it's like 11, 1,200 horsepower, whatever it is. But the McLarens, they come with the tight built motors and upgraded turbos, so you really don't need to do much to get them to wake up. And most people run race gas. The Lambos and the Audi R8s, those kind of that platform, they run upgraded turbos, not upgraded turbos, they run turbos because the V10s can handle all that power. The limiting factor is always the transmission in those kind of cars because the dual clutch.
Yeah, like it sounds like to me like those cars are similar to the BMWs because I know recently the M240 cars, 240i, 340i's. I mean, you really don't need a lot of power for those to go fast, man.
Right? Yeah, those BMWs, they really, I think they saw their fan base liking to modify the more 3 or 4 series cars, so they put like really forged engines in those cars. From what I've seen, I've seen some of these 340s are insanely fast.
Yeah, man, and like those cars. I mean, I would say the N54 cars and up. I mean, you really don't need a lot of mods to make them fast. Just downplay it by E30 or E50, and what you get an extra 100 horse.
Yeah, no, they do like the bolt-on stuff, but from what I heard is like the N54 is definitely the better build as far as like if you want to modify it because there's so many different forums to tell you what to do and what not to do. Um, but yeah, the BMWs are light too, so that's a good factor too. I don't think they weigh that much.
Yeah, and I know really like the M240 cars. I mean, some of them are, I wouldn't say on the heavier side of a 37, 38, but they're all-wheel drive. So, I mean, I would say that that would make up for that weight.
Yeah, no, I agree. But another big thing is people don't consider is the distribute. Sorry, I'm losing my words here. The distribution of the weight. So I think those cars, if I can remember correctly.
So how did you get the nickname Sinister?
So Sinister came from. I'll run it back to the beginning. So when I was 15, turning 16, 17, wanting to get my first car and work hard to get the baddest car I can get. I was looking at some people I looked up to, which one of them being his Instagram, and I don't think he'll ever see this, but it was 14 Stormtrooper, and what that meant is it was a 2014 Jeep SRT in the color white, so he called it Stormtrooper. And I wanted the Jeep SRT was like my dream car at the time. I wanted it so bad. You know, it was I would do anything to get it at the time. So when I got it, I changed my Instagram name to 14 Murdered SRT because trying to follow up. My car was black, and then I eventually just changed it to Murdered SRT because murdered black, all black, and I stuck with that name for a few years. And when I got my Hellcat, my Instagram, I put a poll on, hey, what should I change my name to? Because now it was Murdered SRT while I had my Hellcat the whole time. And then people were like, hey, look, the Hellcat's the majority, content. No one really cared about the Jeep, so change your name. So I put a poll up, and one of the biggest liked ones was Sinister. So because it's menacing, sinister, aggressive, mean, evil. Obviously, that's why the car looks like that. So I put Sinister _ Hellcat. And then after I got a Z06, I changed it to Sinister Z07. A lot of people followed me from the Hellcat, but more from the Z06, or I'm sorry, vice versa, more from the Hellcat and a little more from the Z06. And I got to a point where I'd bought a GTR. I didn't have the Z06 anymore, and I got rid of my ZL1. And I came to the point, it's like, how am I going to be this specific car brand? Which every time I can't change it per car, so I said, hey, I'm not going to do Sinister Hellcat Z07. I'm going to do Sinister Lifestyle. And to kind of cover all the cars I've gotten. Since those cars, if you include the dealership cars, I've had over 150 cars. So, personal cars probably like 30. But obviously I did that just so it's a broad name and people don't have to try to search and find what my new name is because I bought a new car last week,
Oh yeah, and that does make sense because like how you were saying, you would change part of the name after every new car, and I'm pretty sure that people are like, oh well, his name is based off of just one whole car instead of a whole 150 plus cars that you had.
Yeah, no, I mean it's more broad, right? Like it's more broad where no one's going to specify that. Like for instance, at Vet Lab, he recently changed his name to the Performance Lab.
Yep.
Not trying to take credit for, but I'm the one who came up with it because I told him the same thing because he was Vet Lab and he had all these different cars in the shop. He had Hellcats and ZL1s and old schools, and I was like, the lab name is cool, because you're like a scientist for cars, but change it to something different. And we went back and forth, and I was like, do the Performance Lab because now you're just going to cover all the cars or domestic cars and not be so stuck with one brand, which is Corvettes.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was actually talking to him about that at our last talk, and I was like, "Hey, I mean, don't people see it kind of weird when when you're building a car that's not gem based, but like it has a Bet Lab decal on it?"
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, he was putting. He had when the first few Hellcats came in, he made like a new logo for it. And it seems like a lot more work than you should be doing. Like you're having the Corvette logo and the Hellcat logo, and then VL for Vet Lab in there. It just didn't make sense. But I think he loves the name. It's like his baby, so he didn't change Vet Lab. He just posts the non Corvettes on the Performance Lab page. From what I've overlooked, I haven't talked to Ed in a little bit.
Yeah. A big shout out to Ed, man, because he works hours just making people happy.
Yeah, he makes things happen for sure.
I know when we were talking about that twin turbo demon, he built for him, and I mean Matt was telling me that like he drove that car from Michigan to Florida with the AC on it, full blasting and all that.
Wow.
So yeah, so that's really cool.
No, those demons are sweet.
Yeah, well, Kyle, thanks, man. I mean, it was an honor interviewing you and getting to know you, and the guys around the shop, man.
For sure. Well, pleasure for you guys to come over here and check it out, and hope to hear from you soon.
All right, everybody. That concludes it, and we'll see you later.